Christianity is often presented as a philosophy capable of calming the human mind in the face of injustice through forgiveness, love of enemies, and trust in divine justice. Historically, however, this calming function depended on a specific social condition: Christianity without coercive power. Once Christianity became allied with empire and colonization, its philosophy ceased to be the governing force behind Christian behavior. Power replaced moral formation, and that historical shift continues to affect Christianity's ability to regulate fear, anger, and stress today. For its first centuries, Christianity existed as a marginal, persecuted movement within the Roman Empire. It had no armies, no state backing, and no capacity to impose belief by force. Survival depended on internal coherence rather than dominance. In this context, Christian philosophy functioned as a genuine nervous system regulator. Teachings such as loving enemies, refusing retaliation, and trusting divine justice were not abstract ideals. They were survival strategies for powerless communities. Suffering was interpreted rather than eliminated. Community replaced individual self-defense. Calm was cultivated not through mastery of the world, but through surrender of outcomes. This period represents Christianity at its most philosophically tested. The faith survived without land theft, forced conversion, or political violence precisely because it had no access to them. The situation changed decisively when Christianity aligned with imperial power, beginning with figures such as Constantine the Great. Once Christianity became politically dominant, its moral teachings were no longer the primary organizing force of Christian societies. State interests, territorial expansion, and economic extraction took precedence. Colonization intensified this transformation. Acts explicitly condemned by Christian ethics, stealing land, enslaving populations, coercing belief, were justified in Christian language while directly contradicting Christian philosophy. Christianity survived not through persuasion or moral coherence, but through force, administration, and inherited identity. At this point, Christian philosophy was no longer regulating behavior. It was being used symbolically to legitimize power. The calming function of a philosophy depends on its credibility. Christianity's historical entanglement with violence and domination has damaged that credibility for many believers. Modern Christians are often asked to find calm through ideas such as divine justice and love of enemies, while living in societies shaped by historical injustice carried out in Christianity's name. This creates cognitive and emotional dissonance. The nervous system does not calm easily when the moral framework itself appears compromised. As a result, Christian philosophy today often fails to regulate stress on its own. Believers increasingly rely on community support or psychological frameworks, and sometimes turn to non-Christian contemplative practices for emotional regulation. This is not because Christian philosophy lacks calming principles, but because historical experience has weakened trust in its application. It is no accident that Christianity's most effective nervous system regulation now occurs primarily in monastic or contemplative settings. These environments resemble early Christianity: limited power, reduced exposure to political violence, and strong communal meaning-making. For working Christians embedded in societies shaped by colonial history, economic uncertainty, and collective trauma, philosophy alone is insufficient. The nervous system responds to real threats, unresolved injustice, and inherited guilt. No amount of abstract moral teaching can override those conditions. Christianity today struggles to function as a standalone calming philosophy for the nervous system. Its teachings still offer meaning, but meaning alone cannot regulate bodies shaped by centuries of violence, contradiction, and distrust. The problem is not that Christian philosophy is weak. The problem is that power replaced philosophy, and the nervous system remembers everything.